Good Wednesday evening, listeners, and welcome to another edition of Conversations of a Sister here on my YouTube channel. I thank you for those who may be tuned in tonight for tonight's conversation. And tonight's conversation, you know, had been on my mind, and it had been a thought because I've been hearing a lot about it. I listened to a relationship person this week on Instagram talking about it. I listened to a pastor this past week talking about it. And I took that as confirmation to have the conversation. So I thank you all for tuning in tonight for tonight's conversation. Would you be in a 50-50 relationship? Would you go 50-50 in a relationship? Because that is all that I'm hearing now. That's all that I'm hearing people talk about. I'm hearing relationship coaches talk about 50-50 in relationships because I think that these are the type of relationships that women are being presented with. I remember when a couple of years ago, well, not a couple of years ago, but some time ago, when my brother was in a relationship with his girlfriend. It was a new relationship, and she was very close with her parents. And my brother was like, yo, check it out. Her parents, they go 50-50 in the relationship. And, you know, I think he said it in a conversation to me and some of my other siblings. And we were all shocked. Like, really? Like, what do you mean? He said they go 50-50. They go half on the rent, half on utilities, they go half on everything. And for us, that was unheard of because we had never seen that before. My mother and my father, they were not 50-50. My father mandated the household. He paid he paid for the whole house. There was no 50-50. My mother's money was hers, and my dad mandated the house. That means he paid all the bills, he paid all the utilities, he paid he paid basically for everything. So that was my parents and their day and age. Um, I don't think that I don't know if that's realistic in this day and age. Possibly, I guess, and maybe not. I don't know. I think that some say that a 50-50 relationship may not be realistic to some women or desirable because in hearing the conversation in the past week, hearing ministers talk about it and coaches talk about it, as I've stated, they've all talked about how it's not ideal. This one woman said that either he pays all or there is no relationship. Either he pays all or they don't have a future together. So I don't know if it's unrealistic as much as it's realistic. I think that it depends on how a relationship is approached. I think it depends on what standards that are set in the relationship. This is why when you're in a relationship and you're considering marriage, you're considering long term, finances, and I've always said this, finances and responsibilities in the relationship needs to be discussed. That is a discussion that must be had because both individuals in the relationship need to understand what their different roles and responsibilities will be. Now, if you're in a relationship with a man should know what you expect. Well, I expect you to pay for everything, even my bills. And some men may be like, well, that's out. I can't do that. And some men may be like, oh, well, I expect to, because it depends on the type of man that you meet. Now, I have a friend that a lot of times, he and I would go out to dinner, And the last time we were scheduled to go out to dinner, I said to him, okay, great. He was like, I'm gonna take you here, whatever. I said, okay, great. I said, and I'm gonna pay half because this is not a date. He was actually insulted. He said to me, don't ever insult me like that. If I invite you out to dinner, I expect to pay. So, because he was insulted, I had a conversation with him and I said to him, because he was married before, I said, when you were married, did you go 50-50 in your marriage? What was your marriage like? Tell me what the relationship dynamic was like. He said, well, first of all, he said, when my wife and I were dating, she got pregnant. He said, and we met on the job. She used to take the bus to work. He said, but when we got into a relationship and she got pregnant, he said, I immediately bought her a car. He was like, because I didn't want her taking the bus to work. She was having my child. He said, and I was considerate of that. He said, and then after my child was born and we got married, he said, I paid for everything. He said, I mandated the house. He was like, and she took her money. That was her money. He said, sometimes she would want to buy food and I would allow it. He said, but not always, because I felt it was my responsibility to take care of the house. He said, however, if I ever needed her for anything financially, I did expect her to have my back. And that's rightfully so when you are in a marriage, because you just never know what is going to happen within that marriage, because things do happen. One may lose income, one may, I don't know, incur a bill that needs to be paid, something that was unexpected. But either way, these things need to be discussed so that there is an understanding. I had a cousin who had been married for a long time, and her husband decided, after he was laid off from a pharmaceutical company, her husband decided that he was going to go to school. I think he wanted to get his license in divinity, his ministerial license, and he went to school. And while he went to school, she paid all the bills. She mandated the household. But this was something that they discussed, and it was something that was also temporary. Again, we can't have these idealistic relationships in our head. And then when we come to the relationship, these are not things that are discussed. Because don't get me wrong, people get caught up in the relationship. You get caught up, you fall for the person, and then you find out later that their expectations don't meet yours. And when you find out that their expectations don't meet yours, it is best to either keep it neutral by not going anywhere, because you won't if you're not on the same level, or if you're not on the same thought process of where your responsibilities lie. That's not a relationship that you would want to keep. You need to know what the responsibilities are in a relationship. And I just think that now that you have a lot of men and women talking 50-50, you have some women that are just not going to meet it. They don't think that it meets the standards of a healthy relationship. So I guess that depends on what do you expect. You have some men, they know when a woman is beyond their reach, when a woman is out of their league. You have some men that know that, and they'll still pursue her knowing that they're out of her league. So what do? They either meet her there or they fall off. So it's like you have to know, after being in a relationship, what will be ideal in that relationship. Because as the relationship progresses, this is something that you would know. That's like, for example, I knew a couple who he was a teacher, she worked. During the summer months, he was not working because school is closed. She would carry the household. So it wasn't that it was 50-50, but this was an understanding. And this was an understanding, I think, that was met before there was a union because these things need to be discussed. I have a minister friend who said that when he counsels, the first thing he says is when he does marriage counseling, the first thing he says is, okay, well, who's paying the bills? Who's paying the rent? Who's paying the mortgage? And what are you going to do? What is your responsibility as the wife? What is your responsibility as the woman? And what is your responsibility as the man? Like, what are the expectations in the relationship that is going to lead to marriage? Because this is something that you must know. Okay, so for those women, and tonight's conversation is 50-50 in a relationship, because this one relationship girl said, this is what she said this week. She's a relationship coach. She said, men who are talking 50-50 relationships, she said, do not get in a relationship with those men. And, you had men going in her comment section saying, you're going to have a lot of women single. Well, is she really? Because I don't know. There may be men still out there that are willing to pay for it all, you know? And don't get me wrong, you have some men saying they can't afford to do that. They cannot afford to carry a household. And then you have some women that'll say, well, if you can't afford to carry a household, then you can't afford to have a wife. Then you should not be seeking in a relationship, because this is something that you are not able to do. I remember one time I was listening to this one minister, and he said, when you are ready to get married, men, he said, I'm talking to you. When you are ready to get married, what you're saying is that you're ready to share. You are ready to share everything. You're ready to share your life, and you're ready to share your finances. When you're ready to get married, it means that you're ready to share. And some men are like, I'm sorry. I cannot afford to carry a household. So when you go 50-50 in a relationship, that means that each person, they do their own thing. They they do their own thing. So let's see. Let me see. How does that look, right? So I was in a relationship with this guy, right? And he did, but he was talking marriage. So I was like, okay, what does that look like? Because I own my property. I own it. And at the time, I think that he was renting. I can't remember, 3 months, 6 months. And while you're here, I'll pay the bills. I'll mandate the household here. What that looked like. So let's see. He didn't have a house phone. He didn't have cable. He did not have internet, right? These are all of the things that I had. So I'm going to be giving that up to go 50-50 with you for 6 months. And then you come here for 6 months. So you're going to have in my home what I'm not going to have in yours. Do you see how that wouldn't work? Yeah, I did. I saw how that would not work. But these are conversations that you have to have at the onset of a relationship that you think or believe is going somewhere. Because all of these small details can become a big deal once reality sets in. And then what happens is it leads people to focus on their partner's performance, and then you become disappointed. So this is why whatever the agreement is going to be in the relationship, whether it's 50, 50, 40, 40, 40, 20, 50, 60, it's a conversation that you need to have outside of a bedroom, uh, when your heads are straight, before you become different individuals. It's a conversation that you need to have because it's something that you will know that you cannot live with, or you can live with, or this may work, or this may not work. It depends on what the expectations are in the relationship. A 50-50 split, which is tonight's conversation, can be financially equitable and it can help couples prioritize their savings if that's the goal. If that's the goal. For example, when partners have similar incomes, if the incomes are similar, they may be more likely to divide housework equally and save money. However, sometimes it's not fair. It's not fair to split finances equally. So, okay, going back to that relationship that I had, I made more money. So, would it have been fair to split finances equally when I would be the primary breadwinner? That's something to think about, you know? And if that's the case, then that means that I should want to live here full time and not be a part of not having no cable and a home phone, because that is not what I am used to. And there's just some commodities that a girl has to have. And a house phone is one of them. An internet connection is another, as well as the comfort of cable. Because these are the things that I afford myself. So that was an expectation. So if these things have to be compromised, I think that it has to be a discussion. And what are you willing to give up? And what are you willing to compromise? Because one may have more financial obligations. For me, I did, than the other. I mean, I didn't have student loan, but I had a little credit card debt. So in this case, the expectations would be different. When meeting a partner and when meeting a potential, you have to discuss expectations. Um, this one girl jumped in the comment section and said that her fiance lost his job a week before the wedding. He lost his job. So she called off the wedding. She was like, "You don't have a job, we're not getting married." She said, "I'm just not going to do it." She said, "I'm not going to put myself through that. You don't have a job, we're not getting married." I think it was a bit drastic, but love changes things when the money changes. Sometimes when the money changes, love changes, and so does expectation. But maybe that was the ultimate test in order to see where it was going and if it would survive. And I think for him, he had gotten his answer. Now, I don't think I would have canceled the wedding because I don't know what was old. I don't know what their situation was, but I probably would have downsized in some places or downsized in some spaces. But if you don't have the money to begin with, don't do the big wedding. A lot of women, I was just talking about this with my with my sister before the show. A lot of women have a fantasy in their heads as to the wedding, the wedding day, the wedding dress, the aisle, walking down the aisle, the flowers, just the whole Cinderella fantasy of a wedding. And then when a wedding is over, that's when reality set in. I think I covered this in my book, my poetry book, These Things, The Diary of a Poet. I talked about how we focus on the wedding, but we don't focus on the reality after the wedding. Because after the fact, you have to live with that person. After the fact, you have to deal with the realities of life because that is what's going to set in. And every relationship is tested. And you want that test before you say, I do, because you want to be happily married. And I know that nobody's happy 24/7, but you want your relationships to be healthy. And the only way relationships can be healthy is to have conversations about finances, expectations, and responsibilities before you get into the marriage. Nobody should find out that they're in a 50-50 relationship after they're in the relationship. Nobody should find out that it's going to be 50-50 after they say, I do. If it's going to be 50-50, it needs to be discussed. If what is expected of me is expected of me, it needs to be discussed. What you want to show me prior to sealing the deal, I need to see it in order to know that it's a great possibility that it's going to work. So I just received a message in the chat. Tracy, would you do a 50-50 relationship? Hmm. I don't know. I don't. I don't know. I think that I've been programmed to believe that a man should mandate the household, that a man should take care of a household. I think it depends on what my relationship looked like. I can't say. I really can't. I think it would depend on what it looked like. I I am a giver, but I have to a relationship is give and take, and it can't be one pulling more than the other. If I had to meet my man halfway, I'd meet my man halfway when and if it was necessary. But I would have to know what the expectations are from him going in and vice versa. So I can't say, and I won't say because I don't know. So that's not something that I'm willing to speak to. Because in the future, I don't want anyone coming back to me saying, oh, but you said you would do 50-50. I can't say that I will, and I can't say that I won't. I'll just simply say that I don't know because I don't know. And none of us know what the future holds. And I think that when we love someone, but we also have to love someone with common sense. And we also have to know that we are getting into something that is going to be binding as well as healthy. So I thank you for your question, but I don't know if I would actually do 50-50. I gave you an example of a scenario that I was in my last relationship, but it just tells you what my expectations are. But I'll say this. I think that if a female has good credit, he should have good credit. I think that if she owns her own home, he should own his own home. I think that they have to be on the same level. I think that they both have to have something to lose so that together they will know what they can gain because it is about growing with that individual and getting beyond what you can as a unit, as a healthy unit. But I don't know if relationships can be balanced without being entirely equal. You have some men who feel as though they should hold the balance in the relationship because they are a man. I like listening to TK Kirkland. My brother introduced me to him. He took me to his comedy show, and he's a man's man. He get on Instagram telling men, buy your woman that house, buy your woman a car, do for that woman because he's a man's man. And you do have some men who believe that. I was talking to my friend. He was like, I'm gonna buy a townhouse. I was like, really? He was like, yeah, when I buy my townhouse, he said, and I move her in, I don't expect her to pay for anything because I'm gonna pay for it cash. He goes, and if anything happens to me, it's hers. So you have some men that are not into the 50-50. They are willing to be a man's man. And a man's man is gonna want to be a man by mandating everything. So remember, when you're thinking about 50-50, think about what that relationship looks like. Until next week, I'll see you then. Bye.